Today is green. You can see my breakfast situation. We've got some dragon fruit, some jackfruit, some fuyu persimmon, my cappuccino, and then raspberry almond croissant. It's a super big box. Pastry really didn't need all of that, but we moved. Alright, we can skip the intro. Now, I feel like people don't learn, but granted, RAQ is here really between a rock and a hard place. You have enough issues and problems dealing with the people on the South Side. Going back to the first season, that was Howard, that was unique. RAQ's world expanded a bit in the second season as she tried to move out, right? As she now has problems with Juliana. Unique and Howard are still issues to varying degrees. Juliana is a problem that thus far, we have to see how that works out. The move into Jersey put her on a path to collide with the Italians, which was something that was orchestrated by Unique. Marvin seeking out the boss's son to do, let's say, a side job for him, led to a world of problems and got them into this situation now with the Italians. And now here you have it where the Fishman wants to move Jersey dude out the way. But instead of them taking care of their own dirty laundry, here it is that he's kind of propositioning RAQ. Not really propositioning RAQ. It's more so an ultimatum of, you help us take out these bridge and tunnel Italians, or the Fishman, the bridge and tunnel Italians, and everyone else is going to come at you. And it's like, you saw how the bridge and tunnel man came at RAQ at the end of the last season. So it's like, I was talking to some coworkers about the show. You know, like, quite a few of us watch the show. And last year, I watched the BMF documentary, not the show, but the documentary. And I also watched on Showtime there was a documentary about the Supreme Team. I want to say that, I know Nas was on it, but I want to say Nas was like the producer of the documentary about the Supreme Team. And something that they made mention of was, number one, the stress that comes with being a drug dealer, even when you're at that high level, or probably especially when you're at that high level. And then secondly, this thing of, so often you see these dealers, they get to a point where it's like, never mind the money and the riches and all this kind of stuff that's coming with it. The stress, the drama, the looming threat of going to jail, that stuff is stressful. They reach a point where they start to feel like they want to leave this life behind and go legit. But the problem tends to be that when you have it in your mind of, I'm waiting to get X, Y, and Z in order before I leave, something always happens to throw off your plans. As we see here with RAQ, it's like by the time she puts out one fire, there's another one and this and that, where it's like this farewell tour that she seems to be embarking on, you're probably just better off just completely walking away. You know, no announcement, no nothing, just pick up, take your money, and go on about your business. But as we see here, this thing of, I'm preparing to leave, just as soon as I get XYZ arranged, is very likely going to be the thing that not only prevents you from leaving the game, but either results in you going to jail, being killed, or experiencing some other misfortune. If you think back to like the first episode, really the opening sequence where Kanan is at the park and he gets jumped and stuff and runs home, and RAQ ends up having that brief conversation with High Post, where he tells her that not every kid is cut out for the South Side, right? You look at the struggles that Kanan has had, but then it looks like RAQ, Lou, Marvin, that they're doing quite fine in this environment and in this world that they're living in. But then you realize, like, it's truly taking a toll on all of them, right? RAQ makes mistakes along the way, right? RAQ and her maneuvering and whatnot, her manipulations, which sometimes work in the street, but quite often not so much. Her using that at home with Kanan, you see that it's destroyed probably what is the most important relationship in her life, right? It also destroyed what could have been another potentially important relationship in her life, her relationship with Symphony. You look at Marvin, where Marvin ironically seems to be improving, right? But that came about as a result of him being forced into this anger management class, which he was resistant to, right? And you still see that with him trying to become a better person, that he's struggling with that because these things that he's having to do, it keeps pulling him back to this person that he's trying to get away from being. You look at Lou, where in the first season, Lou was like RAQ's right-hand man. And it's like the things that they have to do, killing D-Wiz, RAQ killing Scrappy, Zisa being murdered, right? All of these other things that they've had to do along the way in pursuit or in maintenance of this business. It's like Lou is a shell of his former self. He looks like he's on the verge of becoming an alcoholic, if not worse. Like he's spiraling. And so it's like RAQ said in the first episode, and I think it applies for all of them, what they get out of being in this game, it's not worth what they have to pay for it. You know? It's like the balance is becoming even more skewed. And it's like when you think about it, like I was talking to my mom about the show, she watched the first season and then it was like couldn't take any more of it. She felt it was an interesting show but had like too much violence for her. But when you sit down and you look at this show, it's something that I think is becoming more apparent, and the show's actually getting better as you go on. Not to say that the first season was bad, but you can see like there are layers building in there where starting out in the first season, it leaned a little bit more towards your typical drug dealer or cops type show. But as they move through the seasons and allow the characters to be more fleshed out, which you started to see little traces of in the first season, it's becoming even more apparent here where we've seen them at their high, and even that, there were problems all around. And now you see them on what's really looking like a decline, right? Where they're having to start dealing with the consequences of their actions, right? And it's starting to become a more, or really when you think about it over the span of the show, some things are far-fetched, yes, but it is depicting some realistic aspects of being involved in this life, you know, as far as the sacrifices that you have to make when you're out here doing these kinds of things, the personal toll that it takes on you, the toll that it takes on your relationships, where it's like, sure, you might get these material possessions, but you look at it where it's like, last season, Lou's been in this life for how long? And he didn't have $50,000 on hand to pay off Crown's debts, right? You look at it where seemingly until RAQ got with, I can't remember Juliana's cousin's name, like suddenly she has this large amount of money, which then enables her to buy this house out in the suburbs. Right? As it turns out that her and Kanan had been living in her childhood home. So it's like they have these material trappings. You might have a nice car, you might have some clothes and stuff like that. But it's like, they're not millionaires. They're not rich. And it's like you have all this stress and all of these problems and all of this stuff where it's like, as the show goes on, it becomes more and more clear just like how much it's not worth it. You know, that it's like a trap. You know, it's like you get lulled in. On so many other shows, it's like they show you the let's say the high points, the highlights of, being in the club partying, having a nice car, having nice clothes, jewelry, all these other little things. But then it's like, here you're starting to see the not so nice side of being in this life, the stress and the drama that comes along with it. And so it's like, I'm digging that. I think like that's really cool. No one's really asking at the precinct. No one's really asking questions about Burke's death. But with all of this noise that, what's his name, Baselli, Bridge and Tunnel Italian guy, has drummed up, you now have the feds all over the place. This is part of why the Fishman and crew want to kill him. So with that, the feds are kind of setting up at the precinct to investigate, see what's going on, because now you have all these bodies here, right? Which means it's problematic on several fronts. It's sparked this tension now between the Fishman and Baselli. And with the feds now being there at the precinct, it's likely that they'll start digging into things that are beyond the Italians, right? If they make the connection that, hey, it was something to do between the Italians and RAQ, then questions might be asked. Especially because here it is that suddenly you have it where all of this stuff happened to Burke leading up to her death. She'd accused Howard of being a dirty cop. She suddenly dies. And now you've got like this mess going on here. It's like when it was just Burke poking around, it was easy enough to brush off her activity as her being like an overzealous cop. With all of these other people now poking around, there's a good chance that somebody's going to hit on something, right? It's going to become that much more difficult to keep all of this stuff under wraps. And again, it's like it goes back to this repeated thing of having to tell new lies to cover up the old lies, where when you do one thing to cover up this thing that you've done wrong, you then end up having to do 5 other things to cover up that thing. So it's like, I feel in some way that Howard killing Burke is going to come back to bite him. And likely it's going to come back to bite all of them. Baselli going hard against RAQ is going to come back to bite all of them. It's coming back to bite him because it's now put him on the outs with the Fishman and company. And so it's like, each time they think they're cleaning up a mess, they're just creating more problems for themselves, right? It's like, you look at it, go back to the first season, where RAQ had Lou kill D Nice to appease Buck 20's people. That contributed to her problems with Lou, right? It was the start of her problems with Kanan. Her trying to use Kanan to kill Howard because of the problems he was posing created immense problems in her relationship with Kanan. And not just that, it got Burke into their business. It got Howard more deeply involved in her business and her personal life as well. Howard then trying to clean up the situation. Well, not just that, her killing Scrappy to clean up the potential for him being a problem as a witness, set all of this other stuff in motion. It further deteriorated her relationship with Lou. Howard now, all of the different stuff that he did in the previous seasons, even with his own shooting, him covering that up drew Burke's attention. Him now killing Burke is, I think, just going to end up bringing even more attention. So it's like, the more they try to be slick or manipulate situations to dig themselves out of problems that they've created, it's like just creating more problems. It's like Medusa. It's like by the time they kill this person or they do this thing to try to get rid of this problem over here, it's like 5 more problems sprout up over here, you know? And so it makes for really interesting television. But it's like you would think at some point that you just gotta stop and hit pause, because it's like each and every one of them is just digging themselves in deeper and deeper.